Imagine waking up one day and the person you love no longer recognizes you. My husband survived a traumatic brain injury, but the man I married was gone. Suddenly, I'm alone, jobless, and drowning in fear. Today, I would like to take you through how exactly my life went from dream to rock bottom, the painful lessons I've learned, and how I'm getting back on track. How, even though it was the hardest thing that I ever faced, I'm seeing it as a gift. I don't have it all figured out yet, but I have found more peace, and in many ways I found myself again. So, let's go back to where it all began. I met my husband when I was 38, and up until that point, I was always independent, and I was always working and looking after myself. I always liked the freedom and living on my own terms. And when I met him, he asked me whether I would like to stop working because he wanted to support me financially and otherwise. And he said that that way I will have all the energy to focus on us and our relationship, and it will create beautiful space for us. Initially, I wasn't so sure, but eventually I agreed. My husband was a great provider and we had lovely lifestyle, comfortable. But you see now, I know that this was my mistake number one, because if you are alone, right, and independent, 38 is pretty late in adult life. So when you lived a certain way for most of your adult life, changing it dramatically is not a good idea. So me giving up my independence was definitely a mistake, although at the time I haven't seen it that way. Overall, we were together for 6 years, and 3 of those years were absolutely wonderful. We were deeply in love, we had great life, we had a lot of adventures, and we really enjoyed each other's company. And later, our relationship was always great, and we were still best friends. Although we started spending less and less time together. My husband worked a lot, and because I'm an introvert, I didn't really mind being alone a lot. However, about a year and a half ago, I noticed that something in me was changing. I was 43 at the time, and so I felt like perhaps this is all hormonal. What was really happening, I started to feel like my life doesn't have any direction and any purpose. I used to be a very happy, joyful, and fun person who had a lot of interest and a lot of zest for life. And I felt like I was losing it, that I was losing a part of myself. I really couldn't put a finger on it. So I just put it, onto this hormonal shift, women of a certain age. I felt I have nothing to complain about. I have a nice life. I have a nice relationship. Everything is good. And I'm just making things up. And this is the mistake number 2. We should never ignore our inner voice. The inner voice is there. It's trying to protect us from something. It's trying to tell us something. Let's don't ignore it. Well, I didn't listen to my inner voice. And I became more and more unhappy. And I became more and more isolated. I started isolating myself from life, from friends. I still had a good relationship with my husband, but because we didn't spend so much time together, I didn't tell him all of it. I started to feel like I don't have any control over my life, and secretly I started to feel, I didn't share that with anyone, but I started to feel like I miss my independence, I miss my old life, I miss my old self. And I started to wonder, what would it be like to be alone again? And when I was thinking those thoughts, part of me really liked them, and I was feeling the excitement again, but the other part was feeling very guilty. And I was scolding myself for being ungrateful and unloving, and it just created more and more sadness in me. And then one day my husband got very sick, and he had to have an emergency surgery that went very badly, and as a complication, he suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was in coma first for about a month or even 6 weeks. No one even knew if he was going to wake up. And if he was going to wake up, no one knew what sort of state he is going to be in, mentally and physically. I was always an anxious person. I always carried a lot of fear in me. But that experience just took it on a whole new level. You know, the saying, worrying yourself sick. That's exactly what I was doing. I felt in my body, I was myself becoming sicker and sicker. After he woke up from coma, for at least 6 months, I still was not being told what's going to happen to him and to which degree he was going to recover. For those 6 months, he was drifting sort of in and out of consciousness, and his brain was functioning a little bit one day and then the next, absolutely not. His body was not functioning at all. He was completely paralyzed. And I was isolated before, this experience. I felt like I can't talk about this. I completely shut down in myself, and I was just worrying and being alone. And that was, I think, mistake number 3. Because when you're going through something so traumatic and so horrible, even if you're an introvert, right? Even if you're not exactly someone who overshares, I think it's important to have someone, like 1 or 2 people, close friends, that you can really be honest and tell everything to. And I haven't done that. I did it later, but at that time when I was going through my darkest, I was completely alone. And I think that contributed to my health declining further and further. I got to the point where I was hitting a rock bottom, because one evening I remember I was sitting at the table and I was scared about going to bed that night again. I was never a very religious person. I did always believe in some higher power. I wasn't calling it God necessarily, but that evening I literally started praying, and I asked whether it's God or the universe or the infinite intelligence to just step in and help me, because I no longer can do it on my own. And as much as my whole life fell apart completely at that point, I felt that one thing I was still sure about is that I myself want to live. And so I prayed desperately that evening. And after that, I went to bed, and actually for the first night, for a very long time, I slept. The next day, my husband's doctor called me and said that my husband no longer wants me to visit him and to take a break from coming to the hospital. And that was shocking for me. I went outside to sit on my veranda to absorb this news and to really reflect on it. And I looked around me, and it was such a beautiful day. The weather was perfect. The nature was beautiful. I wasn't rushing anywhere. I wasn't trying to escape anything. I just sat, and I was fully present in the moment. And being present in the moment was something I haven't done in years. I started to feel this enormous sense of relief and this enormous sense of gratitude. I was grateful that I, myself, am here and I can see all this beauty around me. The moment being peaceful for a little moment, I asked myself this question: how is all this happening for me? What is the learning here that I presently couldn't see? What is this situation teaching me or trying to teach me? Because, up until that point, all I was asking myself was, how is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? That my life, I'm losing everything, right? What have I done? How can this be happening to me? For once, finally, I could see. I read a lot of books about trauma and recovery and being a victim versus being a creator of your own life. And at that moment, it really struck me that I've been in a victim mindset, and now I have a chance to actually reframe my situation a little bit, because I'm not going to change it, right? I can change it in myself. And I read this powerful message that the biggest prison that there is in this world is the prison that we create for ourselves in our heads. And I literally felt that sure, objectively speaking, my situation is very tough and it's traumatic, but in the same time, I'm making it even worse for myself by creating this horrible prison in my head. And as I was asking myself these questions about this learning opportunity, I didn't have answers, but I felt like something was shifting, and I didn't have these answers for days. However, I decided to stay with this question, to literally just have it there on the back of my mind or at front, but be present in that question. And so I had two things already. I was feeling grateful. I was reframing my mindset from victim to a creator. And then I also noticed how all this is happening every day. However, what is happening right now? Nothing. I'm sitting here, I'm having this peaceful moment. In fact, all day is going to be peaceful. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to be resolved today. This situation is going to go on for months and months. Instead of wasting this day as another day of worrying, I actually spend it in a beautiful way, and I will appreciate it and I will enjoy it, because perhaps who knows what's going to happen, right? My husband was perfectly healthy, and the next day everything changed for him. So what if this is the only day I have? And that was very powerful, because at that moment I realized that it is true that the biggest learning here for now is that every day is the only day. So I will make sure that I live it to the best of my ability. My husband, I didn't hear from him, right? For months. So I didn't know whether we're going to be together, and if we will, in what sort of capacity. I had the freedom to imagine my life as I would like it to be. And at first I really didn't know, because I lost a big part of myself, and I had to sort of reconnect with myself, or the new person. I wasn't really myself anymore. I was this new woman who I was becoming, and I am still becoming today. But I had time to really feel into my dreams. They started poking out, like little flowers. When I allow them, when I watered them, I tender to them. And I started to see very clearly that in my ideal life, I would be solo again, living in a new country. I absolutely love Australia, but it is an expensive country. My financial situation, because of all what happened and that I haven't worked for so many years, my financial situation was, and still is, very uncertain. So I became creative, and I noticed that there are other countries that I could possibly live in, right? Like Thailand, Vietnam. I started watching a lot of YouTube where people actually did this. They moved, they started new lives in different countries, in different continents, and I started feeling excited again, and inspired by those stories. It was quite magical, because I can clearly pinpoint, if you believe in God or you believe in some higher power or not, I have a proof that everything started to shift for me in that moment when I sat and I prayed and I asked for guidance and I asked for help, and I said I cannot do this myself anymore. Everything did start to shift slowly, and I'm impatient, so I would like it faster, but everything started to shift. And I even did go to Thailand and explored a few opportunities, few places to live. I felt powerful, at least, that I'm in control again. However, I still didn't know what's going to happen with my husband and with us. One day I got a phone call from the hospital. My husband's doctor called me and said that my husband wants to talk to me. 3 months we haven't spoke, nothing. I knew about his progress and his health because I spoke to his doctor every day, but not to him. I had a chat with my husband, and he sounded like he regained some sort of mental clarity. Obviously, he wasn't the man he used to be, but he had enough to be able to express his feelings, to express his wishes. And he told me that he really loves me. He really wants us to be in each other's lives. However, he also wants me to have my freedom back.
because he cannot live the way we used to live, and he no longer wants to. He wants to live completely differently now, in a different location. So he wants me to move on with my life, sell our house, pay off all the debts. Yeah, and that was it. So the next day I went to see him, and we had the most beautiful, loving conversation, and everything was well between us. Sad and tragic as the whole situation was and is, and seeing him, it's heartbreaking. However, the very positive thing was that we did have that conversation, that we were aligned. I have a lot of friends, and I know a lot of people who went through very painful divorces, and I always emphasized with them. And I was grateful that at least my husband and I, it's all very amicable and loving and beautiful. And so this is where it was for about a month. We were keeping in touch, things were moving along, and suddenly I have received an information that now he's hiring lawyers, and that's no longer friendly and amicable.
When I heard this news, straight away, I went back to where I came from, complete anxiety, fear, panic. How is this happening to me? But for the first time in my whole life, I stopped myself and I said, hang on, perhaps this is another learning opportunity. This is a true test. Because if I go back and react the same way that I always reacted, then I really lost. And I lost myself and I lost everything. That the only thing I have now is the rebuilt sense of self, right? My independence, my identity, my love for myself. And I deserve respect, and from myself as well. And the reason and how I show myself this respect is not by not reacting to this. So I decided to focus on what I want, to really affirm the sort of future that I want, and really stay laser focused. And also now I feel like I'm not alone. I reconnected with two of my very close friends and I'm talking to them.
But I also feel like on a deeper level, I'm not alone. That there is this higher power, call it God, infinite intelligence, the universe. But I really feel so connected to it and so protected by it. And I fully trust and surrender for the first time in my life. I fully trust that it's all going to work out. Even though on the surface it looks really bad. I remember reading this quote, I am unmoved by appearances, therefore appearances move. I find it very powerful. And I also feel like the real power and the only power is the power of choice and the power of now, because I'm fully responsible for how I respond to this situation. And there's nothing more powerful than being present in the moment. I have learned a lot throughout this journey, and I'm still learning, and I'm really ready. I'm ready to start this next chapter of my life, which is going to be fabulous.
You're definitely not alone. There are a lot of women like us going through something really tough. I share these stories so we can find hope together. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to walk through this journey with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.